I've started the third part of this lesson where we're graphing amplitudes. And what we do first is identify our amplitude for y equals 6 sine x. Well, 6 is our amplitude. And the period is 2 pi because there's no value attached to x. And we're going to first start with our parent function where we don't have an amplitude. And sine is 0 at 0 radians. At pi halves, it's 1. At pi, it's 0. 3 pi halves is 2. And then at 2 pi, it's 0. Well, now all we have to do is multiply all those outcomes by 6. So I get 0, 6, 0, negative 6. I drew the red dashed line to see where 6 is. I made it 2, 4, 6 positive. Downward is negative 2, negative 4, negative 6. And then I plotted the points. And we can see that the amplitude is 6. And it's 6 down here, that absolute value of negative 6. So we have an amplitude of 6, and it's working well. Now we're going to do the cosine. And we're going to do the same process. We want to know the amplitude. And it is a negative 2, but it is the absolute value. So we're talking plus or minus 2. What the negative does is flip. Just like in algebra, but the amplitude is 2. And the period is 2 pi. Okay, because I know it's 2 pi, I have the standard amount. So I have the quadrantals, 0, pi halves, pi, 3 pi halves, and 2 pi. On this one, I have 1 for cosine. For pi, it is 0. For pi halves. For pi, it is negative 1 because it keeps on going down. We're making a U. Now we're coming a little bit up. And at 3 pi halves, it is 0. And at 2 pi, it is back to 1. But what we want is the same values, but we want negative 2 cosine x. So we're going to be multiplying everything by that negative 2 for that entry. So I'll have 0, pi halves, pi, 3 pi halves, and 2 pi. So it would be a negative 2, 0. This is going to be a positive 2, 0, and a negative 2. And you can see we flipped it. So I'm going to mark this as there are 2's. So this is going to be 1 and 2. Negative 1, negative 2. Okay. I'm going to get my red and dash my period because the axis did not change. That gives me a guideline. So I am plotting this. Here we go. 0, it is negative 2. At pi halves, it is 0. At pi, it is positive 2. At 3 pi halves, it is 0. And at 2 pi is there. So you can see that we've flipped it. And of course, it would come to this as well. All right. And we see the effects of a negative value to the amplitude. But the amplitude is still 2. Okay. So let's look at this one. This one we have a phase shift. And so let's do the amplitude first. It's 3. The period is 2 pi. That's great because we don't have to change anything or calculate the pieces. And then a phase shift down of 1. We're moving the whole thing down. So what happens is in this, our axis moves down to this point. And our amplitude is 2. So, 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. And this one is our amplitude. And then 1, 2, 3. And this is our amplitude. All right. So, but this is our new axis. And we're going to figure it out by math. So don't worry. I have x, and then I have sine x, which is the y. Doing the quadrantals, 0, pi halves, pi, 3 pi halves, and 2 pi. All right. At 0, sine is 0. At pi halves, it is 1. At pi, it's back to 0. At 3 pi halves, it's negative 1. And at 2 pi, it's back at 0. So this is the math we're going to do this time. We're going to multiply by 3 and subtract 1. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 3 times 0 and subtract 1. I get negative 1. I'm going to multiply by 3 and subtract 1, and I get 2. Does everybody see that? I said 3 times 1 is 3 minus 1 is 2. 0, I get a negative 1. Negative 1, I get a negative 3, I get a negative 4. And then at 0, I come back to that negative 1. Now we notice that we have an S. We have it. We have the 3 distinctions right here for that S, and right here. All match. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to, at 0, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't write them in. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to have at 0, I have a negative 1. At pi halves, I get 2. At pi, I have a negative 1. At 3 pi halves, I have a negative 4. And at the other part, at 2 pi, I have a 1. So looky here. And then I'm going to do this guy over here. It's just right there. So in this case, it's going to go down, up, and down. So we can see what the transformations are. Is everybody comfortable? All righty then. The ones you have won't get any harder than the last one that I've done. I'm going to stop the taping because this is all about graphing shift changes, amplitudes, and that type of graphing.